Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Jay Maas to the podcast. Jay plays guitar for Love Letter, and their debut record, Everyone Wants Something Beautiful, is out next Friday on Iodine Records. Everyone Wants Something Beautiful is a phenomenal hardcore record, and if you like Defeater, you're going to love this band and love this album. Abandon is one of my favorite hardcore records of the last decade, possibly 2 decades. It's an impactful record in my life, and it was the record that really got me back into hardcore and heavy music while I was away for a long time listening to other things. Defeater's Abandon meant so much to me that there's an Album That Mattered episode up on Patreon, and if you're a Patreon member, you can listen to that episode. Everyone Wants Something Beautiful is that same vein of depth and complexity in a record. Jay and I talk about the album, and we don't dive deep into the lyrics or the meaning behind the title because Quinn oversaw that, and so Jay didn't have a lot of insight, but I'm very excited to buy this thing on CD or vinyl and have the lyrics to read through them as I'm listening to this record. We talk about the album, and there's a song on the record called Popular Memes, and there's a line at the end of the song where Quinn just screams, "Jesus loves you to death," over and over at the end, and it's so hauntingly beautiful, and I'm so curious about what the rest of the lyrics on that song are and to dive into all the themes on this album. So make sure you check out Everyone Wants Something Beautiful by Love Letter next Friday, and just go follow the band and follow what Iodine is doing, because Iodine continues to be my favorite label at the moment, releasing just phenomenal record after phenomenal record, and I love getting to talk to their bands. And just a shout out to Casey and Iodine for being great human beings. Jay, on this interview, talks about how playing in a metalcore band shaped him as a guitarist, how computer science and recording intersect, how Death of a Nation transitioned into Love Letter, the story behind the album cover, his YouTube channel, and a lot more. This was a fun conversation. I'm so glad I got to talk to Jay, who has been a part of hardcore records that mean so much to me. I want to say thanks to you for checking out this episode of As the Story Grows. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Thanks so much for checking out this interview. I hope you love it. You can find links in our show notes or at asthestorygrows.com to our podcast community on the Discord server, to sign up for our mailing list via Substack, or you can support the show financially. Like I said, you get early access to every episode. You also get Albums That Matter episodes that I do. You get the After Dark podcast. I recently did an audio essay about movie soundtracks, so you can sign up for Patreon to support the show financially. As always, the best way to support the podcast is to share it with people who might love it. It's why I share these bands and these albums, because they mean so much to me and I love them. And I think word of mouth is still the best way to grow anything. So if you know somebody who would dig Love Letter, share this podcast with them. I hope everyone enjoys today's conversation with Jay Maas from Love Letter.
We can't understand if we throw them away. You stay broken when you're running your place. Love the loneliness that you create. You bend to break, you push away. We can't understand if we throw them away. You stay broken when you're running your place. Love the perception that you created. You bend to break until you're broken inside.
You're from Boston? That's where you grew up?
Yeah, that's where I grew up. I was originally born in Seattle, but I ended up in Boston when I was like 10, and I'm 43 now, so I'm from Boston. Yeah.
What took your family from the West Coast out east?
My parents split when I was really young, and then I was living in LA with my mom when I was like in 4th grade.
Okay.
She went on a business trip. She met a dude. She was like, and he was a Marine. He was from Salem, Massachusetts, and it was just like, off we go. And so off we went.
and you've stayed ever since?
Yeah, I have. Ironically, she's back where we grew up. And yeah, I've been out here. I moved out when I was 18, and then my mom moved back to the West Coast shortly after that. And yeah, I've just been here.
Nice.
Yeah.
What got you into music? I assume it was not long after you moved to.
Yeah, no, it was. I told the story last night. Actually, it was my buddy Matt. When we were in 7th grade, he was like, "I'm getting a drum set for Christmas," and I was like, "Oh, cool." And he's like, "You should get a guitar, and we'll start a band." And that was that. And my mom was kind enough, or smart enough, I should say, to put me into. She got me an acoustic first, which I was super bummed out about.
Yeah.
And then she put me into private lessons early. And so that was, little did I know that was going to go a long way.
Yeah. It helped out. At what point did you kind of get connected with like hardcore and discover hardcore? And
way late. Not anymore, but it felt late. Like I was I was skating since I was like 5. So I was into just like Minor Threat and the DC stuff. So I was in Fugazi's like my favorite band. And I was into like No Effects at the time and just like skate punk stuff. And and then I had to go to summer school, and then I met this guy at summer school who was also straight edge. Okay. And he was in a band. His band ended up being a metalcore band, and he was playing with guys that were probably like, his name is Mark Castillo. He went on to do bands like Between the Buried and Me, Bury Your Dead, Amir, like that type of stuff. But he was a phenomenal drummer, probably the best drummer I'd ever seen or played with at the time. And I ended up joining that band, which was like a metalcore band, and that was sort of like, wasn't my thing, kind of still isn't my thing, if I'm being honest, but like got me into learning all of those techniques and into, like, associated with heavier music and stuff.
Yeah. So, it's all kind of by accident that led you to this lifelong hardcore career.
Like a series, like a pinball, just like bouncing around the bumpers. And
yeah, that's funny. At what point did recording and engineering and the technical side
so that was shortly after I got into that band, I did another heavy band that was a little bit more style, a little bit more melodic, and like interesting. I was really into bands like At the Drive-In and stuff like that at the time. And we went and we recorded. We recorded with this guy, Kurt Ballou, who's in Converge, and at his old version of his studio, God City. And it was just like this perfect marriage of I'm a computer science major, right? So it was like technology meets music. And I was like, whoa, I was like, this is it right here. Especially at, 19, where you're very much in like the, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And so at 19, I was like, oh, wow, I could do this. This seems perfect for me. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. I was 18 out of college and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. My parents were like, why don't you go down the recording track? And I was like, okay, that's music adjacent. That sounds great.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome. Did you go to Berkeley for guitar or for recording?
So I went to Berkeley in between junior and senior year of high school, I believe. It was called the Berkeley Summer Sessions. Okay. And I did that, and which, along with the private instruction stuff, really helped my guitar playing. And was, again, once I came from a small town, so it really opened my eyes to all of these different styles and like, it's nice to put yourself in an environment. It's nice and humbling to put yourself in an environment where, you're just getting your butt kicked left and right, in terms of like, you're the guitar player from your small town until you go to Berkeley and you're like, oh, yeah. And then, so my parents and guidance counselor and stuff encouraged me to go to Berkeley after high school. So I applied and I got accepted. But I actually only went to Berkeley for a day.
Okay.
I had already done the summer sessions. I kind of knew the lay of the land. It's really expensive.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I don't know. I'm kind of glad I had this epiphany even at 18, where I was like, I'm going to go here and get a music degree, and I don't have any idea what I'm going to do with that music degree. I'm really just doing this because I'm like the music kid from my school, and people are like, well, therefore you should go to Berkeley, and that was a conventional wisdom at the time. I decided in that moment in orientation that it wasn't a good idea. And so I went to the bursar's office and they gave me most of my money back, and I went and pursued computer science because I had a feeling that while computer science is terribly dry, I was interested in tech and stuff. I still am in general. And so I was already in a punk band. I was already touring. I was already doing like all the cool stuff I want to do. At that point, it was, it was like computers, skateboarding, and music, right? And I had and all three were happening. And I didn't feel like I needed to spend 4 years learning a bunch of disciplines that like really didn't appeal to me. I was into music for different reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. And that computer science, it probably helped translate into studio stuff as technology has progressed and changed. And
yeah, absolutely.
Your troubleshooting is more in computers than on a board these days, probably.
Yeah. No, it's like recording is so software focused now that's exactly right. Being into computers. I mean, everyone's got different avenues in which they record. A lot of us record a little bit more like I do now, but like, the guys I looked up to and I'm still friends with, they were like, my buddy Alex just won a platinum record. He plays drums in a band called American Nightmare, but he produced a band called Wunderbar, and they just went platinum. And there's not a computer in his studio, as far as I know. It's
nice.
It's just a tape machine, and he still does things that way. He's about 7-8 years older than I am, and he's just right around my age. It's like right around where it's like if you started recording, it's like which way are you going to go? And based on my comp sci background, I went software.
Yeah. It was 2002, 2003 when I went to school for recording, and everything was like analog and tape machines. And then it was like I got into the workforce, and I've never used any. That's right. Yeah, everything shifted so fast after that. It was like that was like the 002 had just come out at that point for Pro Tools, and
the Digi,
and everything shifted so quickly after that.
Well, it did it because it opened the door for like everyone to get a note too. Yeah.
Let's briefly talk about Defeater. How'd that project get started?
Defeater was born out of a project that the drummer of Love Letter and myself started. So his name's Andy. He's my favorite drummer ever. And we've been in bands now for over 20 years. And we we decided to start a hardcore band because truthfully, we were in our early to mid 20s. All our friends were starting hardcore bands, and just in our area, it was popping off, in Boston. And it legitimately wasn't even like our preferred genre, right? Like, I think at the time we were listening to a lot of Strike Anywhere and just like more like melodic punk type stuff.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we started a band. We let my roommate name it. He named the band Sluts, of all things. And somehow we spent 3 years touring the country with that band, and it came to a point where we wrote what was going to be our second LP, and the vocalist we had at the time, as we were tracking vocals, more or less told me that he was moving to Hawaii, and I was like, that he was going to Hawaii, and I was like, oh, cool, like when are you coming back? And he's like, I'm not, and I was like, wait, then why did we record vocals today? So yeah, we obviously I had this whole project. I had what became Travels, what became the first Defeater LP. The music was recorded, it was mixed, it was basically done, and we didn't know what to do. So we started like auditioning some other vocalists, and I had recently met a guy named Derek who came and did some vocals on some other melodic project I was recording, and I ran into him at the record store I worked at. And I, asked him if he'd be interested. I really didn't know the guy, but I liked what he did in the studio, and that went well. And so, basically Derek's audition to be in the band was just singing stuff out of a little notebook he had over what would become Defeater Travels. After we knew that like was going to be a good fit, we talked about what I thought. Let's say if we're going to make this a new band, it's going to be a new name. And I had some bigger aspirations for the scope of the project. And I was like, I would love it if the whole band was a narrative. So if like every record ties into a greater narrative, if it's not a concept album, but more of a concept band. Yeah. And so we dug into that, and I would say like one afternoon, when we first started talking about it, we more or less wrote out what would become the entire career of the band,
Yeah.
And so that's how it started. Ironically, the guy who quit Vocals for Sluts and moved to Hawaii moved back right around the time that our original bass player was just sort of over it.
Yeah.
And so he was still a good friend.
Yeah.
And he played bass in another band, and I was like, dude, we need a bass player. So he sort of rejoined that group of friends, and he's still in the band today.
Nice.
Yeah, his name's Mike Pullen. And he started playing bass for what was now Defeater. And we went on to just do the thing. And, I was really, at that point, my recording producing career was far enough along that I could, I had relationships with Bridge 9 and Death Wish and Revelation Records and I think Epitaph too at that point. And so when this new band came around, it was really easy for me to show labels like really directly, and they already knew who I was and stuff like that. So the record originally came out on Top Shelf Records, which did like the original like Pianos Become the Teeth and that stuff.
Yeah, that's the version I have.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. That's really old. Yeah. That's amazing. And then Bridge 9 licensed the Travels vinyl from Top Shelf. And then we did a proper contract for like 2 or 3 more records going forward from that.
Yeah. That's cool. I think my introduction to Defeater was actually like a news story on the PRP or Noise Creep that you had left the band. That was like funny. The first time I was aware of Defeater, and then I picked up Abandon, and then it was downhill from there. But it was funny that it was like that was my introduction. Was you kicked out? I guess. Yeah.
It's such a funny concept because at my mind I'm like, wow, I put 8. I had done 8 long years, and you're like, what's this?
Right. Just like, I've never heard of this band. Oh, their guitarist is done. Okay. But I think I was aware of your name because you had produced and records. So like you were on the back of albums I was already listening to. So I was like, oh, I know Jay.
Yeah, that's super funny.
Which is
cool. Well, yeah, I'm glad. We recorded, the people listening can't see, but you can see my studio here. We recorded Abandon here. And that was a fun one to make too. So I'm glad that you enjoy it.
Cut at the throat with a dull knife and sever the head with time, while apocalyptic engineers and tyrants through the globe, a brand name cuts everyone in line.
Talk to me about Death of a Nation and how that project came together, and what was the inspiration for that?
Yeah, so Death of a Nation was born out of I wanted to be a dad, so that happened. And I think it was New Year's Eve 2017 or something. I was at Andy, who I mentioned before, started Defeater with. I was at Andy's place for New Year's Eve, and I woke up the next day and we'd been talking, and I was like, man, it's like, should we do something again? So basically, unfortunately, we had to part ways with Andy right after Empty Days and Sleepless Nights. And Andy was too busy running his company. Totally made sense. We stayed friends, which was great. Clearly, I was at his house for New Year's Eve. But all my favorite stuff that I had ever written and recorded was with Andy. Mm-hmm. And, maybe it was naive of me. I thought, getting away from, I was in my mid 30s, and I was like, okay, well, I'll, that was awesome. Like, I toured the world. Like, I met my wife, like, in Australia. Like, we played Moscow and, played Tel Aviv and played Belarus, like all these crazy places. And I'd done it a lot of times. And so I kind of thought, okay, check mark on that one, and let's move on. And then, of course, the itch came back. So I asked Andy, and he was like into the idea. His concern was like, I can't tour like I used to. And I was like, I don't want to. And who's going to front the band? And because I had produced records, I had produced a record for a band called Verse back in the late 2000s, a record of theirs called Aggression. Mm-hmm. Sean, now Quinn, of the vocalist of Verse, was and still is my favorite, aggressive vocalist, period. And so I was like, well, if we're going to ask someone, why don't we ask, in my opinion, the best?
Yeah.
And so I did. And I remember Quinn's response was, I thought you'd never ask. And I was like, oh, shit. That's good. I was like, I'm like my favorite vocalist and my favorite drummer. I was like, all right, let's do something.
Yeah.
So Death of a Nation was really a reaction to the times, you know, politically, you know, as far as a lot of us are concerned, some wild shit just went down. And, you know, we wanted to write about it, and I couldn't think of anyone more qualified than Quinn. Mm-hmm. And so we did. So we did 4 songs, and that was supposed to just sort of be like a studio project. And it was for a long time. And then you fast forward to, you know, this past year or two, where we realized we were going to actually do an LP. We linked up with Iodine Records, and it didn't make sense to call the band Death of a Nation anymore. There was about a year after we put our EP out, there was a white nationalist documentary called Death of a Nation that also came out, and it was just terrible. What bad luck. You know, especially given the lyrical content from the band. It was like, you know, it couldn't be more opposite. Yeah. So we just sort of left it because that wasn't really an active thing. But then when it was like, oh wait, we're going to be active, like it just in no way do we want to be associated with anything like that. We were getting messages from people who were confused. We're like, hey, like, can you link me to the documentary? You know, we were like,
that's not us.
A, that's not us. B, no. And so we realized it was time. We had to change the name. We talked to the label about it. Everybody was cool with it. We ended up landing on Love Letter because it was just it was literally a morning. I woke up, I was talking to my wife, I was talking to Quinn, and we were like, I don't think like it makes sense to call this Death of a Nation. And so we very quickly went through some ideas, and we came across Love Letter, and I loved it for a few reasons. There's the alliteration. I always loved that, but there's also the double entendre of like, most people are going to think of like a handwritten like love letter, something to that effect. You know, but I view it more as like one who lets love in, you know, or, you know, and it's like, that's something that I've really carried with me through. Everyone goes through shit, right? Like you never know, like relationships and experiences and, you know, whatever it is. But I think like one of the hardest things to do is to remain empathetic, even when things might have been unfair to you, might have adversely affected you. And it was because, you know, it could be perceived as like maybe some negligence from somebody in your life, one way or the other. And I like the idea of, I don't know, having like a robust enough emotional disposition such that you can still calm down and you can still see things from somebody else's point of view. Ironically, it ties into I felt this way for a long time, and it actually, and I came up with the original concept for the Defeater stuff. So like that was actually also what Defeater was supposed to be about, was like seeing these same situations from all these different lenses, right? Yeah. It was like in understanding that everybody's road is tricky, and that it's like it's not black and white. It's often shades of gray, right? Yeah. And so, still sort of like carrying that sentiment with me. I liked that. And everybody else seemed to like it too. And then I had the bonus, which was my wife and I love this old band called Mineral. It's an old emo band. And my wife and I got married to Love Letter Typewriter by Mineral. Oh, nice. So I wasn't mad at that either.
Nice. I got to see them there in Philadelphia when they were doing their reunion stint. I guess that was before COVID now. Yeah. It was like 2019 or so. Yeah.
I got to see them on a couple too, and it was great. And then we played with them in 2015 at a festival called Grows Rock in Belgium. And we were staying at the same hotel. And, you know, they were sort of like, you know, a legacy emo band. Mm-hmm. We were, it was really funny because we were headlining like one of the tents. And I still nerded out super hard. I went up to the drummer and I was like, hey, what's up? I'm Jay. I'm like playing this. I was like, dude, I fucking love Mineral. And he was like, oh, dude, thank you. And we were outside. I was like, can I get a picture with you? I never nerd out, but like Mineral was just such a huge influence on me. Yeah. I couldn't help myself.
That's awesome. Yeah, going back to Death of a Nation, I put that EP on, the self-titled EP on this morning, and Metaphor for Murderers was on, and Trump's at the end of that. And his voice kept turning. I was like, "What is this motherfucker doing on my speaker?" I was like, "Oh yeah, he's on this EP."
Yeah,
I was like, "Damn."
You know what's really interesting? And I guess this is my guitar player told me. I didn't hear it, but apparently, at one point in time for a while, maybe when things were really tense, Spotify would cut off right around there.
Oh yeah,
like it was like censored. Yeah, like some weird censorship thing happened there. But like, yeah, we lost our original bass player over that song actually, because so that's a 7-inch. The that released 4 songs. It's a 7-inch, right? And speaking of double entendres, there's the line that comes in after that bridge is a 45 for the 45th. Yeah. And like, of course the double entendre is like, one would think like it's a gun or something, right? But 7 inches spin at 45 RPM, and the song is called Metaphor for Murderers, right? And it's the idea is that it's a message, not a death threat. Our old bass player didn't see it that way.
I want to ask about your YouTube channel, Jay Maas Recording. What led you to take to YouTube and share videos on your process or various things?
What did lead me to start doing that? Pre-pandemic, my wife was running a vintage clothing store, and so because I can't not nerd out about everything, I decided to get. I guess I don't know if I decided, but I subsequently got like really into cameras, and so. I was learning about lighting. We were taking all these pictures, doing all this stuff. And, at some point I was like, you know what? I mean, if I flip these to video mode and the lighting and stuff, a lot of this stuff is really similar.
Yeah.
So I gave it a shot, and I've learned a lot since. And I just kind of enjoy dabbling. I'm a YouTube junkie myself, like constantly educating myself, learning what I can on YouTube, and I think a lot of people are. And so, yeah, I took inspiration from other people that I liked on YouTube, and I've always been extroverted. I like communicating, and I like talking about the things I know about. And it forms a sense of community too. I just released a video last week, and I've probably talked to 20 to 50 people about the subject matter, via comments or DMs or whatever it is. And I like that. I like growing communities, and so that's a good way to do it.
Nice. Well, let's talk about this Love Letters record. Mm-hmm. I assume you've known Casey a long time from the Boston scene, but what led you to Iodine for this release? Yeah,
well, ironically, I had booked Iodine bands. We'd been at the same shows, but we never really became friends until Casey reignited the label and called me. He's like, "Hey, I have a band that I think I'm going to sign. I think you'd be a good fit to produce it." And it was the band The Darling Fire, and it's members of Rocking Horse Winter, Further Seems Forever, and Geronimo played in Poison the Well for a little while. And obviously I was really into it. I love all those bands. And so that started our conversations, just like, going through the production of the record. He was really happy with how it came out. And we just became buddies. And, at some point I said, I've got a project here like that I'm thinking about doing more with. And we had to have some, relatively serious, like not like terribly serious, but like, talks where it was like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, like, what would that look like? And I would say Casey is really responsible. Basically what Casey said to me was like, I think I'm down to do this, but you can't do nothing, right? Because when we did the Death of a Nation EP, it was like, all right, let's put that out. Yeah. Get back to our normal lives. That was fun. Bye, everyone. And he's like, you can't do nothing. You have to like be a band. Yeah. And I was like, okay, fine. Yes, but I'm not going to like, no offense, I'm not going to go play Middle America on a Tuesday, right? Like, because I'm raising my son, and it's just like, I've done that. Yeah. So he was cool with that. He was like, no, that's fine. But like, again, you can't do nothing. I was like, okay. And so we started talking about it, and that's how that came to be. I'm not going to speak for Casey too much, but he liked the project. I think he also liked that. I've been producing records for a long time. I think he had confidence in like that it would come out well.
Yeah.
And so it was really happy. We've the pre-order launched last month. It comes out later this month. The pre-sale numbers are crazy. We're almost sold out. And streaming numbers have, risen tremendously comparatively to where they were. And so overall, there seems to be a nice buzz and a nice uptick surrounding the record. And so everyone's really happy right now, myself included. Yeah.
Everyone wants something beautiful. Where'd the title and concept come from?
You'd have to ask Quinn about that. Quinn suggested it, and I don't know how I haven't asked. Okay. But I just remember thinking that I absolutely loved the title. And again, on these things, I never try to speak too deeply to Quinn's lyrics, just because Quinn really is a master of vocals and lyrics and all of that. And it's just a gift that I'm lucky to have that in the project. And I feel very comfortable and confident in my own domains, but as a songwriter and as a texturist and as a producer and all that stuff, that's fine. But I could never do what Quinn does. I don't know where the title, but it reminds me, after this podcast, because I have another one later, I will ask, and the next guy will ask. But I love the title either way.
Yeah, it's a great title. I wish this press release came with the lyrics, because I don't know, it seems really deep. I think it was popular memes, like at the end of that track, Jesus loves you to death, just screaming. It's so haunted. I love it so much. It's like it reminds me of that Defeater stuff and Abandoned, that So it's incredibly rich lyrically album.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more.
So.
No, it really is. It's I had the good fortune, obviously, to produce the vocals too with Quinn, and so it was like unwrapping the longest Christmas gift of all time. You know what I mean? Just because you have all these songs to do, and actually the song that you mentioned is the first one that we tracked vocals for, and then you sort of end up with 10 presents, right? You get to the end of the song and you're just like, damn, dude, wild. So pretty sick.
Yeah. Who came up with the album concept for the artwork?
So that was a picture. We played Fest last year, and we had stopped somewhere to grab some food. And it's a sensitive subject for Quinn, so I won't go too deeply into this. But Quinn was, I think, it would be okay enough for me to say struggles with mental health issues, anxiety, things like that. So Quinn was struggling, I'll say, and the rest of us are just cavemen. We had no idea. Thank God my wife was there. She's so wonderful, and she actually is someone's missing. The rest of us are eating burritos, and and she snapped that picture in that moment. And so I had no idea that picture was that it was going to exist, and that was taken on real film. My wife always brings a real film camera with her basically everywhere she goes. And so when we got the photos back, I was like, babe, what is this? And it was right at a time where we were figuring out what are we, the label was art, what are you doing? And we could not figure it out. We just really couldn't. And then I saw that photo, and I'll admit, I pushed really hard for it. And it it was a battle. But through a series of, I think, really productive conversations, and getting the right stylizing on the photo, and I think everyone ended up really, really happy with it. That was probably the one thing I pushed for, where I was like, oh, I'm super pushing for this, and I'm not pissing anyone off. But I'm super happy with the art.
Nice. Album's out, end of this month. Are you guys looking at shows or different festivals for this year? Just kind of
totally,
seeing what happens.
We're playing Fest again this year, so we'll be in Gainesville in October. Apparently, we're going to Florida a lot, because next month on July 6th, we're going to be playing with Crime and Stereo in Orlando, and we do have some shows in our area that are yet to be announced, but that will be announced soon, and they're going to be supporting the record. And we just played one last week in Providence that also doubled as a video shoot, and that was great. It was like old days, dude. It was just like, I don't know, the exact perfect size room for like punk music.
Yeah.
A floor show, everyone super tight, hot and sweaty. Just, it was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I'll ask you this last getaway question. I asked somebody else this at one point, but I don't remember who it was. Is there something about like New England and maybe Boston in particular that has led to this like rich music scene?
Well, I'm sure there is. If I had to guess, some people say the weather, but I don't know, because it's like, you know, it's cold in Newfoundland too, right? So, like, you know, like, that, I think it might be that Boston is a magnet for youth and educated youth, like with so many universities, right? Mm-hmm. And what happens is Boston attracts people right out of high school who are going to go to one of our like many institutions here. And I think that's right around the time that like you're just old enough to do a band that is good, right? Like your high school band probably isn't great.
Yeah.
But your college band and your just post-college band might actually be pretty sick. And I think it's like, and you're also at the age, you're still in your 20s where it's like, it being in a band seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, I think people are of the right age. There's just a, you know, there's just this magnet and this melting pot of youth. And I think too, it's a progressive city, for sure. Speaking of Trump, I think last time we were the only state that had 0 counties that voted for Trump, you know, so it's like in Massachusetts, basically about as blue as they come. Yeah. And, yeah, thanks. It's all me. So yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. It's just people, like-minded people, creative, intelligent people who are in proximity to one another. And like I said, you know, like we've got, you know, yes, we have Harvard, yes, we have MIT, but, you know, we also have Berklee College of Music.
Take something you love and run it into the ground 1,000 times.
It's my favorite piece of art, you know, I've done. So this one's really, really special to me. I think it's catchy, it's diverse, it's eclectic, and largely due to Quinn and everyone really. But it's just a really passionate. It's a really passionate record that I think sounds honest and raw, but is still very crankable. Which that's always like that's my line, right? Like, I don't want it to be disingenuous, but like we have to be able to crank this in the car.
Yeah.
You know?